My friend, thank you so much for coming on the pod today. The one and only Familiarcow, building ThorChain in 9 realms. You're the man. I know you're doing a ton, so thank you very much for taking some time out to chat.
No, thanks, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. Super excited that we get to do this. So maybe you can kind of give a bit of a background on yourself. I'd love to hear your story.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Familiarcow. I joined I first learned about ThorChain just before the mainnet went live back in probably around like January or February uh 2021, so early 2021. And the network's much older than that, but that's when I first learned about it. And I just joined the team about a year and a half ago now. And before that, I actually started out making these ThorChain sneakers. So I made these like custom sneakers, and then I joined 9realms, which is one of the core dev groups for ThorChain. So now I do, business development, communications, and just help out with the core protocol at 9realms. So just started off as just a community member, and I got to say, like, ThorChain is one of the most grassroots projects, like, period, that's out there. It's pretty insane. Everyone's just a community member that decided to become a contributor. So it's exactly what happened to me, and now I help contribute to ThorChain, which there's nothing else I'd rather be doing right now.
Awesome. Love to hear it. So for those that aren't super familiar yet, maybe we can give even a little bit of background on what ThorChain is and dig into it and talk about it and kind of understand some of the things y'all are doing, because I think it's pretty groundbreaking, actually.
Yeah, so I'll go into the high level, and if I'm like skipping over parts, then just back me up in case I go too quick, because there's a lot to ThorChain. So the way I think about ThorChain, it does native asset settlement. It's an app chain, so it's built on Cosmos. It's one of the oldest Cosmos chains out there, built on a pretty old version of Cosmos. And the entire purpose is to answer the question: how do you secure native assets without a trusted authority on the network? So how do you just use like economics and cryptography to custody native assets without it being insecure? So that's pretty much the entire architecture. The ThorChain network is just like, how do you swap from Bitcoin to Ethereum without a trusted central party in the center, where there's one company like controlling the network, or there's a multi-sig, or you're relying on like a Chainlink oracle? How do you solve that problem? So ThorChain is what was created to actually solve that problem. And yeah, what it does essentially is it's this network that custodies native Bitcoin, it custodies native Ethereum, Dogecoin. We do Cosmos chains, we do EVM chains, we do UTXO chains, and it's essentially this middleware layer that is able to take in assets from one chain and put out assets on another chain. And now we're different from a lot of bridges. Like, I don't think of ThorChain as a bridge, because ThorChain doesn't do any wrapping. It doesn't actually take one asset in and then issue an IOU out. It just takes one native asset in and spits another native asset out. So you could think of it as similar to a centralized exchange, where we have synthetic assets that are on the network. So like you can basically LP and then trade synths on the network, or you can just take native assets in and out. So we power some of the swap infrastructure behind some of the biggest apps in this space, like Trust Wallet and Ledger. We just started doing some stuff for Ledger. So when you trade Bitcoin to Ether on Trust Wallet, you're using ThorChain's infrastructure, and ThorChain is basically just what was devised to figure out how to actually move Bitcoin and move value from Bitcoin to Ethereum, and not move the assets themselves, which is different than a lot of bridges.
That's incredible. So you're basically bringing liquidity from all the different parts of the crypto ecosystem together. Like,
Yep.
you're
So
basically
you can.
allowing it
Yep.
to flow.
Yeah, exactly. So by being able to actually LP and trade native assets, the risk profile is totally different than doing something like wrapped. So yeah, it kind of it enables exactly what you're saying with being able to just move cross chain like really seamlessly and easily. So ThorChain itself is just infrastructure. So you can use it on a bunch of different apps like ThorSwap, Trust Wallet, Thor Wallet. There's dozens of them that use ThorChain as infrastructure for the back end, and that's what makes it really easy to make swaps. Like do what you would do in a centralized exchange, except for like all the crypto native things, obviously, because you can't have decentralized fiat like onboarding and offboarding. But yeah, essentially that's it.
Wow, that's incredible. And so maybe we can talk a little bit more about like how the actual like technically how that works, because I know in some of our discussions and digging into it, there's it seems like there's some really interesting pieces to it, like how it actually works. And it seems like there's Rune is an important part of this whole dynamic, and you're able to basically avoid, if I understand correctly, you're basically able to avoid the security threats of bridges, and you're able to basically keep like have native assets stay native in a way. Maybe I'm not understanding it fully, but so can we jump into that a little bit more?
Yeah, no, I think the way that you described it is kind of correct. So you could think of it as sort of ThorChain has an AMM very similar to Uniswap, where everything on Uniswap is paired against ETH. Everything, I guess that's not true, but everything on ThorChain is paired against Rune to well, it's for a couple reasons, which I'll get into later. Everything is paired against Rune, which helps with a couple different properties of the network. But essentially, like you can have this AMM where you have these vaults of native Bitcoin. So we have probably around 800 Bitcoin on the network right now, and there's a bunch of different vaults that are sharded against a bunch of different nodes, and essentially it's very similar to what you think of in a Uniswap pool, where it's just that's how many coins there are, and then you can just swap from one to another. So the ThorChain is just the logic that is able to say like, hey, we received these coins, we need to send out these other coins from the other end. So ThorChain is just creating that state machine in the middle that says, okay, this is what's happening on the Bitcoin chain. We just received these coins. Now we need to do the swap. Swap the Bitcoin to Rune, and then swap Rune to Ether, and then we send out the Ether on the other end. So ThorChain is just kind of the observation layer in the middle that is always monitoring its vaults and says, hey, we have an inbound, we just received Bitcoin. What do we do with it? Is that an LP deposit? Is it a swap? How do we do that? And it knows that by whatever memo the interface puts in. So the interface is kind of the constructor of the swap. So it says, hey, this is this guy's Bitcoin address. Give me an affiliate fee of this much. Make sure he doesn't get less than 5% slippage for this trade. So ThorChain is just the middleware layer that observes transactions on one chain, and then we'll send out a transaction on another chain. And in the middle of that is a very Uniswap-like market maker, liquidity pool. So ThorChain is just a bunch of liquidity pools and infrastructure to be able to secure native assets for those liquidity pools. So
Fascinating.
like going into the security thing a little bit, I mean, we can start with the nodes, because that's kind of like the nodes are the computers that run the actual like software itself, and they know what to do when they receive swaps. So there's around 90 validators for ThorChain. It's one of the most like in Cosmos chains for sure, definitely one of the most decentralized networks. But I think even like extrapolating further than that, there's a lot of different actors that help operate this network. And there's many dozens of them, I'm sure. There's no way to know how many people run nodes, but there's about 90 nodes in the network, and you have to stake a lot of Rune to become a validator. So you have to put up, the minimum is 300K. rune to become a validator. And even if you put up 300K, you're probably not staying in the validating set for long. It's kind of a different model from a lot of Cosmos chains, like in terms of how we do security. So I'm going to dive into that just a little bit. So normally you probably need around like, 500,000-600,000 rune to stay in. And then the max bond is somewhere around 1 million rune. So you put up a lot of rune, and then every 3 days, the network says, okay, we need to churn the validator set. So all the nodes do this basically proof of liveness every 3 days, where we move all the funds from the old vaults to new vaults, and the highest bonding validators, they get added to the set, and then the oldest validators that are been in the network for the longest, the ones that are performing the worst, they get kicked out. So there's a constant churn of new validators coming in and old validators leaving. So the entire purpose of that is to stop the network from being able to be captured by anyone that is trying to do that, by constantly rotating validators in and out, and in that process, changing vaults and proving that the network has access to all of its coins every 3 days. So there's a bond war every 3 days, essentially, for new validators to say, hey, I have the most rune, I want to join the validator set. And they stake a lot of rune to do that. And so this kind of links into what I was saying before on why it's important that every asset in the pools is paired off of rune. Because if you think about, every validator puts up a ton of rune in bond. So there's like, I think there's somewhere around 85 million in total bond right now on the network from all the validators. And if every asset is also paired against rune in the liquidity pools, you can know exactly what the value is of all of the native assets, as in like Bitcoin, Ethereum, etc., all the stable coins. You can extrapolate the value from that, and you can know whether the network is undersecured or oversecured or not. So if there's 85 million rune in the bond, and there's 50 million rune in the pools, which is paired against 50 million runes worth of other coins, so there's 100 million in total liquidity, but there's 50 million rune, you know that the network has proper security, because there is quite a bit more in the bond than there is in the liquidity, just because of the ratio of rune in the validators to the rune in liquidity. So that's pretty much how ThorChain operates, without an oracle and without any kind of price feed or anything. It knows the price of every single coin that's in the ThorChain native asset pools, and it knows the value of the total bond. So essentially, you can have this system where, without any kind of external data, you can ensure that the value that's at stake is always significantly more than the value that's at risk, which is whatever is in all 800 Bitcoin or whatever. If you were to steal that 800 Bitcoin, you could not. The rune that you would lose from doing that, the current value of it has to be higher than the value of all of that Bitcoin. So that's kind of rune in a nutshell, an economic security, which is pretty fascinating, and kind of that was one of the most interesting things that really turned me on to ThorChain at the beginning, was just seeing like a completely sovereign system that's able to have these mechanisms to always ensure that there is security between completely anonymous parties online, which is like pretty incredible to me.
That's fascinating. So one thing that I love as part of that is you're basically using rune as the measuring stick, because it's the settlement asset that everything's, if I'm understanding correctly, that everything is being that's allowing you to swap everything directly. So like it goes from like Bitcoin to ETH, goes from Bitcoin to rune to ETH. And so because it's that like rune is the middleware between it, you never have to leave your, like the Bitcoin can stay on the Bitcoin network. So there's no need for the wrapping. And the Rune is actually that middleware. And because you have more that is being, because you have more Rune that is in the network than you do other assets that are being used to trade against it, you have the incentives are to actually keep those assets in there, because it doesn't make sense to try to attack it because you've had to put up more Rune than the other thing. And so if you try to attack it, you lose more than you would gain. And so it's an economic disincentive to actually try any funny business.
Yep, exactly. So like I think of the nodes are they're all in a Mexican standoff where if anyone makes one wrong move, anyone tries to send out funds if they're not supposed to, they're going to get their bond slashed, and the bond is it has to be greater than the sum of what it is they're securing. So they always have more at stake than to lose, which is that's the entire game theory that makes this network actually work. And it has to be that way because there has to be more Rune in the bond than there is in the pools, and there's going to be an equal amount of native assets to Rune in the pools because that's just how AMMs work in terms of value. I mean, so yeah, it's pretty incredible. There's also one other thing, which is a fairly interesting system, which really that has really sold me on this whole economic security type thing, which a lot of people are kind of moving towards this model now because it really is the only way to ensure that completely anonymous like individuals can cooperate is by like having something economic at stake. So it's this thing called the incentive pendulum. So the incentive pendulum is what modulates where the rewards go to. So when people make swaps, some of obviously there's liquidity fees which get generated, and so the question is, where do those liquidity fees go? Do they go to the nodes? Do they go to the LPs? Well, the answer is they go to both the LPs and the nodes, but it gets split up depending on if there's more security or if there's more liquidity. So if the network is undersecured, like if there is not enough, if there's close to not enough of a balance where there's more liquidity than security, then more of those rewards go to the nodes. So it bumps their APRs up and it takes the rewards away from the LPs. So it disincentivizes LPs and incentivizes the other end of things. So the network is constantly balancing to try and get that optimal fit of twice the amount of bond than there is liquidity. So the network is always giving rewards in the appropriate configuration to properly incentivize security if that's what's needed, or to incentivize liquidity if that's what's needed. Like if the bond is equal to the liquidity, that means the network is right on the edge of being undersecured, and basically all the rewards go to the nodes to keep them in the network and to incentivize more nodes to bond up. And that's when you see APRs for them to start going way up. I think since we've been closer to that recently, the APRs have gone from 15% to 30% single-sided for running a Thor node. So it's a system that tries to put the incentives where they need to be to get the proper balance of liquidity to security. So that's kind of the last piece of the puzzle there. And that's what keeps everything balanced. It moves the rewards to where it's needed the most, which I think is a really cool way of doing things.
Yeah, that's a natural liquidity optimization dynamic there, where it'll flow, the capital will flow where it needs to go in order to power the system the most effectively. So okay, talk me through some of the, so I think we've understood some of the use cases of Rune, but let's talk about those a little bit more, because it seems like Rune is really useful in order to capture some of the yield generated from the trading swaps, or the trading swap income or fees, What
Mhm.
other what other places do, and obviously there's upward demand pressure for the in order to for bonding and in the liquidity pools. So there's a lot of places where people just need to use Rune in order to start generating yield. What are some of the other pieces to the whole Rune upward demand pressure? Like where else is that coming from?
Yeah, I mean, those are definitely the main two levers for Rune, and those are the ways that it's most useful because you need Rune to secure the network, and then obviously you need Rune for liquidity. Everything else that's built on top of ThorChain, like we have a lot of products that like you don't need Rune at all for a lot of things on the network. Like you make a swap on the network, you go Bitcoin ETH, you don't need to touch Rune, you don't even need to know ThorChain exists. You just need to send the funds to ThorChain with the right memo. So like ThorChain is, I mean, so sorry, Rune is most useful as a liquidity and security like asset, and that's how it's most useful. So they're like the architects have been pretty careful in like there's no like smart contracts on ThorChain. Like there's bonding and liquidity are the two things that Rune is for. So like that's why we don't export Rune, or we don't send it out over IBC, or we don't wrap it and send it out to other chains because it's just not really necessary. Like we want as much of it in the network as possible, and that's just going to keep the machine running. So its main uses are definitely just security and liquidity, which it does really well, and it's most liquid in its own network. So we try and keep everything really tight to just ThorChain itself, and then yeah, we build outwards towards other chains, but Rune itself is most useful in our own network. So that's pretty much what we do. We don't export it or do anything else with it at the moment. Not to say we don't build other things with with ThorChain and with Rune, but like that's like where you can deploy Rune is either in an LP or in a bond.
Awesome. I love that. So what are you seeing as far as like the folks that are coming to build using the infrastructure you've set up? What are you seeing as like the people that are building the most? What types of things are they building? And then what are you seeing as far as just like the activity that's going on in greater crypto? Like are there more builders that have been accumulating over time, or are we kind of like where, what does that tell you or inform you about kind of where we are in the broader marketplace of, and I'm not, I'm not talking about like prices and stuff. I'm talking about like actual like
Yeah,
developer
usage.
activity, usage, community building, stuff like that.
Yeah, sure. So like a lot of what I've been doing over the past 6-8 months, and what I work with at Nine Realms is doing integrations. So that's getting more and more people to use the infrastructure that is ThorChain. So ThorChain is kind of this faceless backend. ThorChain is just those 80 nodes that secure the vaults. That's all ThorChain is. And now what we're doing is getting more interfaces to start using ThorChain. So we started in December with Trust Wallet. They integrated ThorChain for swaps. So if you have a Trust Wallet, which many 10 million people do or something like that, you can, if you have Bitcoin in that wallet, if you have Ether in that wallet, Dogecoin, like anything that we support, you can swap natively using a Trust Wallet. So that's been like a huge demand driver, and like something that we've really been trying to do is just get more interfaces to start using our infrastructure basically. So Trust Wallet's one of the biggest ones. I can go into some of the numbers in a second, but we recently just started doing infrastructure for Ledger. So we're going to start. We started in the Discover tab. That's where we are right now. There's a couple. We still have a little ways to go and some technical hurdles to get over with the Ledger team, just like in regards to like what the device can actually do. So we're still working through those, but our goal is to be in the Ledger Live swap functionality, which I'm sure will be in the next in the next like couple of months. And our goal is just power all of the swap infrastructure between all the wallets. Because to me, wallet is the thing it's one of the stickiest things in crypto for sure, I think. And the reason for that is because that is your interface to the blockchain itself and to being able to actually sign and send and broadcast the transaction. And to me, that's where it makes the most sense to, and it's the easiest to implement because they already have all the functionality to do a ThorChain swap. They can send Bitcoin, they can send Ether, they can send Doge, whatever. That's all you need to interact with ThorChain. So the product market fit is clearly there because we're seeing thousands and thousands of swaps a week with Trust Wallet, and we're going to start seeing that with more like tier 1 wallets as well, especially the multi-chain ones. So yeah, I mean that's pretty much the game right now, is just knocking on everyone's door and saying like, hey, who needs native swaps? Because there's really no alternatives. What's the alternative right now is like using Changely or ChangeNow, and maybe getting KYC'd. Either way, you're relying on just a black box company to swap those coins for you. So we all, not that we have as many roots as they do, because obviously we have like real limitations to what we can do just because of our infrastructure. But yeah, I mean, we're just trying to provide that service to as many interfaces as possible. So I think of ThorChain as more as like the B2B like service, where we give the infrastructure to the front ends, and then the front ends offer that to the users. So it's been hugely successful with Trust, and we're definitely going to see it with a bunch of other wallets as well. Just going to take a lot of time, especially the big wallets. They move really slowly, and obviously they want to make sure that their users are secure. They want to do their due diligence. There's a lot of like contracts and things that need to go into something like this. But our team's been working super hard to get integrations really kicked off across the board.
How fun, how exciting. So when you're thinking about going and building a relationship with another project like that, obviously you're talking about working with some of the biggest projects on the on the crypto sphere, however you say that, in the world of crypto, within the industry. How are you, for our business development friends who are looking for a little bit of alpha here, like how are you going out and building the relationships with these different projects, and what does that sales cycle look like?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is just word of mouth, and people know us because we've been around for so long. So Nine Realms, the founder of Nine Realms, his name is Gavin. He was the founding engineer at BitGo, which is obviously the issuers of Wrap Bitcoin. So he's been around in this space for forever and knows a lot of different people. And then a lot of it is just sticking around and having an actual useful product that has like a real, not only like product market fit, but it has the ability to generate revenue. So like ThorChain it has affiliate fees built right into the protocol. So when you send in a swap as the interface, you can say, hey, send me as the interface 15 basis points from this swap. So if you're a Trust wallet and you're doing millions and millions of volume a week, you can see how that becomes really attractive as a value proposition to say, yeah, I mean, we're doing all this volume and now we're giving this service to our users, and we can get some fees off this, and we can actually power like a lot of revenue. So but I definitely think that people in this space are they're skeptical. But if you're around and you offer like an actually salient product that has that product market fit and has that like wider adoption, that people want to adopt things that are useful to the space. So if it's a useful product, then be persistent, and like don't be too persistent, because obviously like everyone has their own priorities and their own roadmap and their own capabilities. And a lot of things don't pan out at the beginning, but these relationships, like the Trust Wallet thing, I think that was a 16-month conversation from the first conversation to actually shipping it last December. So, and these things are, especially if you're working with the larger names in this space, is not, short term. Oh yeah, we have a conversation and they're integrated in like 2 weeks. Like these are months and months, like years of, deliberation, like revenue sharing agreements, like legal hell, all kind of stuff like that, which you have to deal with. So But if it's a salient product, especially one that can drive revenue, or either revenue or users are the key to this space. I mean, obviously. So I think if you can offer either one of those, also like one thing that's definitely made a difference is just community. Like ThorChain, like as I said, is like very grassroots, and it has a very grassroots community, and like they're definitely not afraid to reach out to people and just like educate people, because that's all we're trying to do is teach people about like basically the better way to go cross chain rather than using a centralized exchange, and getting more people to interact on chain and to trade on chain. So that like the community BD definitely works. You like, but you can't shill, you can't astroturf. Like it really has to come from a place of like, hey, like this is like a good product, and like you guys should be using it, not because like we're gonna stop yelling at you on Twitter or like whatever, but because this will actually be useful to you. This can power revenue. Like this is the better way to do things. Instead of knocking on Changelly's door, you should be using this instead. So that's been really successful, and not everything has panned out, obviously, but just sticking around and persistence and being able to prove that it's a big like salient product that really resonates with people and people can actually use it, makes a big difference. And then once you knock down a couple big integrations, and basically have the weight of those like brands, I don't like talking in those terms, but when they kind of give the seal of approval, it just makes it a little bit easier for everyone else to say like, oh well, these guys are using it, maybe it's okay, because being a first adopter in this space is quite difficult, especially when there's so many things. Like there's so many products and projects that are always coming out, but if you're building something that's unique and something that really has like a huge gap in what's available versus what it can do, like ThorChain does, then I can see why it worked out, because there's no one else that can do it, and the gap is so wide at this point. It's been 3 years, and there's no one that's even successfully trying to copy it.
That's incredible. Yeah, I love that idea of going forth with a great product that nobody else really has a better solution in. So that's checkbox number one. And then from there, making sure that you're just sticking with it over the long term. I mean, a 16-month sales cycle is huge. That is, for at least for Web3 folks who want immediate,
Oh yeah,
immediate gratification. So yeah, the ability to stick with it over the long run and to just keep building, keep knocking on doors, that seems like that in and of itself, just the sheer perseverance is a superpower.
yeah. And when you're dealing with the trust, like that's just what it's going to be. When you're dealing with a more like scrappy, Web3 type vibe, that's probably not going to be the case. But when you're dealing with like the brands that deal with tens of millions of people, like they got to do their due diligence, and they really got to make sure they know what they're getting into. Like they don't just jump into things blindly. There's definitely like decision makers and deliberations, lawyers. Like there's a lot that goes into it. And I had no idea before I started like doing any of this either. So it was interesting to see all that kind of play out.
That's amazing, my friend. So I want to kind of scope out a little bit and just see and get kind of a pulse check from you on like, where do you really see the industry going moving forward? Like what are some of the cool pieces of technology we're going to see come out of crypto? As I'm sure like my big focus and what I'm mostly lasered in on is the intersection of crypto and gaming and the metaverse and how those things kind of play together. Obviously, unless there's really easy access to liquidity and a really great in a set of tools that are a piece of infrastructure to be able to or to enable the metaverse to operate smoothly, for example, ThorChain and all the things that you're creating. Without that, then the stuff that I'm most excited about of being able to be your PFP in the games and own your assets. And then like, eventually we could be having this conversation while we're on dragons flying around and, in the metaverse, whatever that ends up looking like. The most important part of that is the infrastructure piece, to make sure that's nailed down. So then when there is mass adoption, they can actually adopt it and they don't get rejected by our technical underdevelopment. So I think it's all kind of connected. But like that being said, what are you kind of seeing as on the horizon as far as what people are building that you're most excited about? What you think it needs to be built that maybe is not happening right now? And yeah, just would love your thoughts on where the industry's headed from here.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you with the gaming. The gaming stuff is pretty exciting. Like I could like I'm definitely a gamer, have been forever, and I could definitely see the value in Web3 games like coming to life, and it's going to take a while for that to play out to like see what comes out of that. I'm just curious about it, honestly. Like I just want to see what happens, because some people are going to have some crazy ideas, and right now it's like really simple things, and in 10 years, like people will be looking back being like, that was not the direction it was going at all, or like it totally went like who knows what's going to happen. Like it is just like it's hard to know what's going to happen before it does. Like I'm going to tell you, but I think the biggest strength for crypto in general is its censor resistance, and it being like this kind of sovereign thing. So like to me, that is one of like the biggest value propositions of like of Bitcoin, of Ethereum. Even though people will argue against that, I definitely argue that I do think like it's definitely sovereign right now. Who knows where it goes? Like these things could turn into like the states trying to control them, and like who knows where this is all going to go. Like we kind of just got to be along for the ride, but definitely fight for fight for our independence, so to speak, if it comes to that, right? And that's why like that's part of the reason why a lot of people like ThorChain, is because it is this completely sovereign thing where it's like it's built on top of these other sovereign networks and interacts with them and lets you move value around. Like it doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't need permission. It has no concept of anything beyond just the data on the chains itself. So I do think that's one of the weaknesses with blockchain gaming, to be honest, is that in the end, like it like there needs to be like a company or like a there needs to be someone that is giving the value at some point. Like there needs to be someone that's developing the game, or obviously there needs to be people playing the game, but there needs to be someone that is like creating that value and like hey, here's the new like new patches for the game, and like the new stuff that's coming out, new things to spend your coins on or whatever. So like to me, that's the one gripe I have with blockchain gaming, is that there needs to, like, even though like it's built on these decentralized networks where you can have your own, you can be your own like sovereign like store of value. There still needs to be someone that is like at the helm. Like there needs to be like the Activision who is actually developing the game now. And the issue that I end up coming to when I think about this is like, does it really matter that it's built on a permissionless system when, like, in the end, the game has to be permissioned because it's run, people got server bills to pay, unless someone figures out a way to create this game where there's some kind of distributed backend where everyone can, take part in running the servers for the game. And, there's like community involvement. Maybe that's like where it gets to eventually, where it's like actually just this completely like, this game that's not even run by one organization, that's run by like hundreds of different organizations that all kind of come together for governance. Like maybe that's the way that it goes. But I wonder what you think about that, because yeah, especially with crypto being like its main value proposition being this completely sovereign like thing, how it comes to terms with like gaming, which inherently has to be like there's developers and someone that controls the end result.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I'm not quite sure I have a great answer to it, but I think we're going to see that dynamic play out as time goes on. There are fully on-chain games, and there are more centralized games. And then there's, obviously there's like the Web 2 games, and then there's the Web 3 games that are like, okay, well, we're including crypto in the game or blockchain within the game somehow. And we're just kind of enabling, like, it's a great game. We're trying to build a great game, and then we're enabling blockchain tech into it. So I'm not actually sure which one's going to end up winning out. I would say for the gaming piece, probably the more important thing is, what are you actually giving to your players, that the gamers themselves, that they didn't have before,
Right.
right? Like, you can't just say, you can't just say like, hey, we're a Web3 game where you can own your assets. Because if it's not a great game with a loyal player base, then they don't care, because those assets don't mean anything, because they don't like the
Yeah.
game. They're not playing.
Or there's no value in owning the assets. If the developer walks away, then then the
Exactly.
assets are, so you own them, but there's nothing you can do with them. They're just the bits.
Exactly. So maybe what needs to happen is, maybe it needs to start off completely centralized and build a great game. And then from there, somehow set up different different divisions. So for example, maybe there's a developer division where there are certain things that have to be done for the game to maintain and prosper. And so maybe like it's bug patching is one of them. Then there's feature building is another one. Then there's new character development is another one. So there could be these divisions within so there's a division. So that would be the dev division. Within that division, there would be certain roles. And then what could happen is, a certain percentage of the profits of the game would go towards the dev division, and whoever is proving by maybe GitHub uploads or some sort of verifiable proof of human, like proof of effort, proof of results of, hey, I patched this bug, that's worth a certain percentage of that month's rev share. And so you can build out these divisions and attribute a certain percentage of the profits from the game and the company to go to that division, which would incentivize people to go in and fill those roles. And then maybe there's a different division that's like, hey, we're trying to decide what actually needs to get done in the other divisions. So there's like a governance division, and their whole role is to figure out, okay, well, what do the developers need to be working on? What does marketing need to be working on, et cetera? So you build out these different divisions, you incentivize with a profit share, and within that division and within that profit share, you divvy that up based on who's contributing the most, and you track that based on verifiable and on-chain metrics that have to be able to be seen. So I think there's a way to like do it right. It just will that'll just take a long time, because you have to get it up and running in the first place, start generating profit and revenue, and then you have to have the foresight to set it up in a way that it can become bigger than yourself and bigger than any one company, in order for it to actually grow into something beautiful. And then at the same time, you also have to take into account the players, because they need they should own their assets. When they buy a skin in a game to look cool, they should own that skin, and that skin should carry with them, and it should probably track their, like if it's a MOBA or a battle royale or whatever, it should track their kills, it should track their KD ratio, it should track how many wins, how many losses, stuff like that. So things like that are where, when we see these games really start to get a mainstream adoption and we see great teams building great products, I think that's inevitably where it will go. And then it will be fully decentralized, in the form of somebody will have to take that first step to build something great, figure out how to decentralize it properly with proper checks and balances in place, and then let it go. Let it go from there and show the world that it's possible. I mean, it's similar to what happened, with the U.S. back in 1776. We got our independence, and from there, like, George Washington could have stayed on for many, many years, but he decided not to. He's created the 4-year term, and then in a way open sourced that role. And so then allowed other people to come in and fill the role and created a role more than him as a person. So I think it takes a leader that cares more about the success of the project than the success of themselves to do that.
Yeah. One thing that you made me think of while you're saying that is, all right, so there's this one concept which I think of a lot, which is building platforms versus building applications. And if you think about all of the biggest, all the biggest businesses, a lot of them today are platforms, but you can't start out by building a platform. You start out by building an application which gets absolutely huge. Like you think of I mean, two examples are the Fortnite and Facebook. Fortnite started out as this game, and then it turned into a platform like Epic Games. Like they started making now they're a gigantic platform, which many people use. And what a lot of people do, especially in the crypto space, is they build platforms and then expect applications to come to them, which is the complete backwards way of building. Like you need to prove the product market fit before you start going in that direction. So I think that's one of the things that we do that we do that a lot of people haven't, because a lot of platforms in crypto are like smart contract platforms where it's like, hey, like we built this new network, you can deploy EVM contracts to here. That's great, but then nobody's building on them. Even Ethereum, how many dApps are people really using? Like they're not really using that many. Like they're only using a couple of them. And even Ethereum, I would say kind of did it sort of backwards, but things kind of worked out. Where with ThorChain, I think of it kind of the opposite. Where ThorChain is kind of like the kick-ass application, where it's not like it's very modular. Like there's nothing else you can do with ThorChain besides like what it does. Like it does swaps, it does LPs, like soon to do like lending, which we didn't even get into, which is like this whole other thing. And it's soon to do like perps and order book and things like that. But you can't just like deploy things on it. And going back to the example, same with Facebook. Like it started off as just Facebook and then turned into this whole like platform that it grew into. So yeah, I mean, I just wanted to like say something about basically just not developing for the platform, but building the killer application first and then evolving it into the platform which people can work with. Like that's the way to build the Web3 game. And that, like I could definitely see that being the successful model of like, yeah, you build the hit game, and then you prove out the competence, and you gain like a more of a market share, mind share that way, and get users, and then you evolve that into the platform, which really brings the utility. Where it's like it's yeah, you can't put the cart before the horse and build the platform before you build the application. Like you need users, and you need to prove that like no one's going to use your platform if there's nothing to use on the platform. So yeah, just like one of those interesting things I think about a lot with crypto, because so many people are just trying to build they're trying to build a marketplace before they're building anything that you can do on the marketplace besides just basically just gamble or speculate.
Exactly. I think you hit the nail right on the head there. But again, that to me is, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, because that means that there's a lot of opportunity for new people to come in and to build really awesome stuff. So I'm excited about that's actually exciting to me, that like we've seen so much great building, and yet there's still so much opportunity left for people that really want to keep building and take it to the next level. So yeah, man, I'm excited about the future here. But dude, I know we're getting close to time here. I just want to thank you so much for taking some of your very precious hours and minutes to come and talk and share your knowledge and do this interview. It's been a real pleasure, and I'm very grateful.
No, thanks a lot for having me on. Yeah, I love talking about this stuff. We do spaces not every Friday anymore. It's because life is busy. But we do talk about ThorChain a lot. So we do Twitter spaces, and yeah, we just like talking about this stuff because there's honestly just like so much going on in this space. So it's important to just like find out like what you're interested in, and how to get involved. There's like what to learn about, because there really is like a lot in the space, and a lot of it's vaporware, and then there's some real actual useful utility that's being built as well. So definitely like anyone listening, like definitely like be skeptical of anything. Like you should verify like anything that I said. So that's why we live in this world of like open source code and like free and transparent like blockchains. It's pretty incredible, and I can't wait to see where we're going to be in like 10 years.
100%. Well, Familiarcow, you're the man. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. And yeah, look forward to seeing what you keep building and all the great things that you do over the course of your career. So thanks for coming and chatting. Everybody that is tuning in today, I want to thank you so much for sticking with us here to the end. Really appreciate you and value you as a part of this community. So I'm just grateful for you, and I will see you all on the next episode. Take care.